He was a Navy SEAL searching for silence after years of blood and chaos. But on a stormy night by the Clearwater River, fate pulled him back into the fire. A wounded police officer and her K-9 floated past his cabin, bound, broken, and left to die. When he dragged them from the freezing water, he didn't just save their lives. He uncovered a secret powerful enough to ignite a war. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from, and if this story moves your heart, please subscribe for more stories of courage and faith. The storm came like an army across the valley, roaring down from the mountains with the sound of 1,000 beating drums. Trees bent until their roots screamed. The Clearwater River, usually a mirror of peace and pine reflection, now churned with a violent, frothing rage. The air was a cold blade, slicing through the seams of a man's coat and his resolve. Inside this maelstrom, one figure moved, alone, deliberate, steady as if carved from the same granite that formed the cliffs. Jack Callahan, age 37, stood on the small wooden dock beside his weathered cabin. He had the rugged look of someone who had lived too long under orders and too little under peace. Broad shoulders under a faded flannel shirt, forearms corded with quiet strength, a face lined with hard miles and harder memories. His eyes, a deep steel gray, carried the stillness of deep water, the kind that hides everything beneath the surface. A short beard shadowed his jaw, and a thin scar curved under his left eye, a relic from Kandahar, where one mistake had cost him 3 friends. That single scar carried the quiet guilt that had driven him here, to the cold wilderness, to solitude, to silence. The rope in his hands was slick with rain. He was tightening the last knot securing his small rowboat when lightning lit the river like day. For a brief second, something flashed among the waves. A dark shape that wasn't driftwood. Jack froze, squinting against the sheets of rain. Then the lightning struck again, closer this time, and the truth surfaced. A wooden raft, half sunk and spinning, carried 2 shapes, a woman and a dog, bound together in the merciless current. For a heartbeat, his mind went blank. He felt that old familiar jolt, the one that used to come seconds before an explosion, the body knowing danger before the brain did. His instincts roared to life. Without hesitation, he dropped the rope, kicked off his boots, and plunged into the river. The water hit him like cold concrete. It clawed at his chest, dragged at his limbs. His body moved not by will, but by training. 10 years of combat diving and extraction missions came back in muscle memory. He swam hard, cutting through the surge until the raft was within reach. The woman lay face down, wrists tied cruelly behind her back with coarse rope. Her long dark hair streamed over her face, tangled with rain and riverweed. The dog beside her, massive, sable and black-coated, a German shepherd, was lashed to the raft by its legs, unmoving except for a faint twitch of the ear. Jack gritted his teeth, slicing through the rope with the knife from his boot. The raft pitched violently, throwing water into his eyes. "Hold on," he muttered, though neither of them could hear. He looped one arm around the woman's torso, the other grabbing the shepherd by the scruff, and kicked toward shore. The current tried to tear them apart, but Jack had fought worse tides, of water, of war, of fate. By the Oisitant's time his boots scraped gravel, his lungs were fire. He dragged the woman onto the muddy bank, rolled her onto her back, and pressed his ear to her lips. Nothing. Then, there, a faint breath, shallow as the whisper of rain. Her pulse fluttered like a trapped bird. He began compressions, counting silently, the world narrowing to her pale face. Her features, though streaked with mud, held something fierce even in unconsciousness, a strength beneath fragility. She was perhaps in her early 30s, with olive skin gone ghostly under the cold, a small scar at her temple, and lips trembling between life and death. The dog stirred beside her. Its eyes, dark amber and glassy, opened halfway, then closed again. Jack quickly cut its bindings. "Easy, boy," he said softly, his breath misting in the storm. "You're safe." The shepherd gave a weak, trusting whine, as if it understood. Lifting the woman into his arms, Jack staggered toward the cabin. She was lighter than he expected, but cold as ice, her head resting limply against his shoulder. The dog followed, limping, pressing close to his leg, as if sensing its only chance lay in the stranger before it. The cabin door banged open under his shoulder. Inside, the world was dim, lit only by the flicker of the oil lamp swinging from a beam. Jack laid the woman on the couch, covered her with 2 wool blankets, then turned to the fireplace. His hands moved fast. Tinder, kindling, spark. Soon flames licked the air, throwing warmth against the storm's howl outside. He stripped off his soaked jacket, revealing arms tattooed with the faded ink of his unit insignia. The firelight caught the edge of his eyes, turning them from gray to silver. He checked the woman's pulse again. Still there. Her name tag was torn but half-readable. Emma Lopez. He looked toward the dog, now curled tightly by the door, shivering but alert. "Rex," he read off the collar, his voice low. "You made it too." Steam rose from their wet clothes as the fire crackled. Jack worked silently, boiling water, cutting away the rope burns on the woman's wrists, then wrapping them in gauze. Her breathing deepened, though her skin remained clammy. Outside, thunder rolled again, echoing off the mountains. Jack glanced through the foggy window. The rain blurred the tree line, but through it, just for a second, he thought he saw light, headlights sweeping slowly along the ridge. He froze. Out here, in this weather, no one should be driving. His gut tightened, the soldier's instinct stirring awake. He doused the lamp, plunging the cabin into half-darkness. Only the fire burned low and steady. He crouched near the window, peering out. The lights vanished, swallowed by rain, but the unease stayed. Behind him, the woman stirred, groaning softly. Jack turned. Her eyelids fluttered open. For a heartbeat, confusion clouded her gaze, then fear sharpened it. She tried to rise, failed, then focused on him. On the stranger kneeling beside her, his rough face half lit by firelight. Where am I?" Her voice cracked, raw from cold and exhaustion. "Safe," Jack said simply. "You're in my cabin. I pulled you out of the river." She blinked, trying to piece memory from fragments. They threw us in," she whispered, panic flickering in her voice. "They thought we were dead." Her gaze darted to the dog by the door. "Rex." "He's alive," Jack assured her. "Tired, but alive." She exhaled shakily, tears mixing with the rain still clinging to her lashes. Her body trembled, not from cold now, but from the memory of fear. "I was undercover," she murmured. "They found out. She winced as pain lanced through her ribs. Jack pressed a steady hand to her shoulder. "Don't talk. You need rest." But Maya Lopez was not the kind of woman to surrender easily. Even half-conscious, there was defiance in her jawline, in the way her eyes met his. "You shouldn't have saved me," she said faintly. "They'll come back." Jack looked into the fire, the orange light flickering over his scar. He'd heard those words before, years ago, from men who thought safety was something you could run toward. "Let them," he said quietly. The storm pounded harder against the walls. Somewhere beyond the river, a tree cracked and fell with a sound like a gunshot. Jack stoked the fire, feeding it wood, letting the heat drive away the damp. Maya drifted into uneasy sleep, her face softening as exhaustion overtook her. The dog lay close to her feet, eyes half open, watching Jack with cautious loyalty. In that silence, Jack felt the old tension coil inside him, the kind that came before battle. He didn't know who she was, or what she'd brought to his doorstep, but the war he'd fled had just found him again. He sat by the window until dawn's first pale light crept through the clouds, the rain easing to a whisper. The river still roared, swollen and dark. Jack's reflection ghosted in the glass. A man who'd sworn never to fight again, staring into a storm that refused to leave him be. He turned back toward the couch, where the woman and her dog slept under the blankets, and whispered, "What the hell did you get yourself into, Lopez?" Outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it the faint hum of an engine in the distance. Jack's jaw tightened. The war wasn't over. It had only changed rivers. The storm had not ended. It had only changed its voice. What had roared through the night now whispered through the cracks of the wooden cabin, a low, constant murmur of wind against the logs. The fire in the hearth had burned down to a deep orange glow, its warmth spreading through the small room heavy with the smell of wet pine, smoke, and fear. Jack Callahan sat by the window, his eyes tracing the faint outline of the river beyond the fogged glass. The world outside looked ghost-like, smothered by mist and the pale light of early morning. His breath hung in the air as he checked the rifle laid across his lap. Habit, not paranoia. Old habits were the bones that held him together. Behind him, a soft groan broke the silence. Maya stirred on the couch, wrapped tightly in wool blankets. She blinked slowly, her lashes damp, her eyes glazed with confusion before memory returned like a knife. Her breathing quickened. She sat upright, clutching the blanket to her chest. Jack turned, his posture relaxed, but his gaze alert. "Easy," he said quietly, voice low and measured. "You're safe here, for now." Maya Lopez was 31, with sharp cheekbones and dark eyes that carried more fight than fear. Her hair, still damp, clung to her temples. Even bruised and exhausted, there was a disciplined poise about her, the kind that came from years of command training and walking into rooms where she was never expected to walk out alive. Her right shoulder bore an old bullet scar, faded and silver, the mark of a mistake she'd never forgotten. "Where are we?" she asked, her voice hoarse. "My cabin," Jack replied. "Clearwater Ridge, about 10 miles from the nearest road. Anyone else live nearby?" He shook his head. "Just the bears." Her lips twitched faintly, then the humor faded as her eyes darted towards the window. "The men who threw me in the river, they'll come back." "Then we'll be ready," Jack said. For a moment their eyes met, two soldiers from different wars, both haunted by the same ghosts of survival. Jack moved to the stove, poured boiling water into a tin mug, and handed it to her. "Drink. You've lost too much heat." She nodded, the mug trembling slightly in her hands. The shepherd, Rex, lay near the fireplace, his breathing steadier now. His fur, once sleek, was still damp but clean. Jack had washed away the mud and blood. The dog opened his amber eyes, watching Maya with quiet devotion, tail thumping once against the floor. She reached out a hand, fingers brushing the thick fur along his neck. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice cracked not from weakness but from gratitude. Jack crouched by the small pile of wet clothes he'd taken off her earlier to dry near the fire. He lifted the torn police tactical jacket, heavy-duty navy blue, scorched at the shoulder, the Silver Ridge police patch half ripped. As he turned it over, something small and metallic fell from the inner lining onto the floor. A USB drive, dull silver, no larger than a thumb. Maya froze. "Don't touch that!" Her tone was sharp, urgent. Jack's eyes flicked up to her, calm, unreadable, but he obeyed, letting the drive rest on the wooden floor. "You want to tell me why a dying cop is carrying a flash drive sewn into her uniform?" Her jaw clenched. "Because people like you aren't supposed to see what's on it." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "People like me don't care about secrets, sweetheart. We care about survival." Silence hung between them, broken only by the ticking of melting snow dripping from the eaves. Maya stared into the fire for a long time before she spoke again, her voice softer. "It's evidence, names, routes, payment logs, everything. We've been tracking a weapons network for 8 months, smuggled rifles from Eastern Europe through Vancouver, across the Canadian line, down into Montana. The people behind it—" She hesitated, as if the air itself might be listening. "They have police in their pocket. Maybe more." Jack frowned. "You're saying someone in your own department set you up?" Maya nodded, bitterness tightening her features. "We had a leak. My team was ambushed near the border. 2 officers dead. I was supposed to disappear with them." He leaned back, studying her. There was no fear in her now, only the simmering anger of someone who'd lost everything but her mission. "So they tied you up, threw you and your dog in the river, and thought they were done." Her eyes met his. "Until you showed up." Outside, thunder rumbled again, distant but steady. Jack stood, walked to the window. The storm had eased, but the air carried something heavier than weather, that subtle pressure before violence. Across the fog, a faint glimmer moved between the trees. Headlights, slowly sweeping, then gone. Maya saw it, too. Her fingers tightened on the blanket. "They found us." "Maybe," Jack said, his voice calm in a way that only made her heart race faster. He moved with silent precision, checking the rifle, loading 2 shells, then setting it beside the window frame. His composure was unnerving, the cold readiness of a man who'd already accepted every possible ending. The clock on the wall ticked once, twice, then silence again. Maya forced herself to think, her training kicking in. "There's a service road north of here. They could have followed the river bend from the drop point." Jack nodded. "If they're hunting, they'll come at night. No use wasting bullets in daylight." He turned to her. "You should rest while you can." But Maya shook her head. "I can't. They'll track the signal." "What signal?" She hesitated, then pointed at the jacket. "The USB, it's encrypted, but it emits a faint beacon when active. My contact was supposed to retrieve it tomorrow morning. If they intercepted that, frequency—" Jack cursed under his breath. "So it's not just evidence. It's a goddamn tracking device." Maya nodded grimly. "If they're close, we need to kill it now." Jack picked up the drive with a cloth, turned it over. A tiny LED blinked once, barely visible. Without hesitation, he tossed it into the fireplace. It cracked once, the plastic casing curling under the flame, then split open with a soft hiss. "No more signal," he said. Maya exhaled, a shiver of relief mixed with dread. "You just made us ghosts." "I've been one for years," Jack said quietly. The dog lifted his head, ears twitching. His body went rigid, a low growl vibrating in his chest. Jack stilled. Outside, through the moan of the wind, came another sound, faint, mechanical, like tires crunching on gravel. He motioned for Maya to stay down. Crouching, he reached under the table and pulled out a second rifle, older, worn, but clean. He slid it toward her. "You remember how to use one of these?" Maya's lips curved in a grim smile. "Better than most." Minutes passed. The sound faded, replaced by the steady drum of rain again. False alarm or something worse? Jack didn't relax. Neither did she. As the hours stretched, Exhaustion overtook the adrenaline. Maya's eyes grew heavy, her head tilting slightly toward the fire. Jack watched her fight sleep, jaw tightening. She was too stubborn, too disciplined to allow rest. "Sleep," he murmured finally. "I'll keep watch." She didn't argue this time. Within minutes, her breathing steadied, deep and rhythmic. Jack remained by the window, rifle across his lap. His mind wandered, not to war, but to a question that hadn't left him since the moment he'd seen her in the river. Why had he jumped in? After all these years of running from other people's wars, what made him dive back into one? He didn't have the answer. Maybe he was tired of ghosts. Near the fire, Rex shifted, curling closer to his sleeping partner. The dog's chest rose and fell in a quiet rhythm, each breath syncing with the storm's heartbeat. Outside, the fog thickened, and through it, far beyond the cabin, a single pair of headlights appeared once more, stopping this time, lingering, watching. Then they vanished into the woods. Jack's eyes narrowed. He reached up and slowly blew out the lamp. The cabin sank into darkness, lit only by the trembling orange pulse of the fire. He checked the rifle's chamber, then sat back, listening. The storm whispered secrets against the glass, and somewhere in the forest, men whispered back. He glanced once more at the woman and the dog sleeping in his home, strangers who had brought the storm to his door. Then he looked out into the night and thought, peace never lasts. It just hides between battles. The storm had broken in the night, but the world it left behind was bruised and heavy. A gray dawn crept across the horizon, bleeding through the mist that clung to the river like smoke. The cabin was silent, except for the steady crackle of dying embers. Jack Callahan stepped outside, boots sinking into the wet earth, breath misting in the cold air. The ground smelled of pine, gun oil, and rain. Every instinct in him whispered that the quiet was not peace, only the pause before something worse. He crouched low near the muddy path leading to the dock. The soil, soft from the storm, had kept its secrets well, but not all of them. He brushed away a thin layer of silt and found it. A tire track, wide and deep, far too large for any ranger's truck. The tread was military grade, meant for heavy transport. Nearby, a spent shell casing lay half buried in the mud, brass glinting faintly in the morning light. He picked it up, turned it over. 9mm, he muttered. Recent. Behind him, Maya stepped into the open, wrapped in Jack's flannel shirt and a blanket. Her face was pale, eyes dark from sleeplessness. They were here. Or close enough to make me lose my appetite, Jack replied, tucking the casing into his pocket. Rex padded beside her, moving with a slow, cautious grace. The German shepherd's fur was still damp, the color of smoke and ash, and a faint scar cut across his flank, a reminder of the ambush that nearly killed them. He sniffed the air, ears pricked, a soft growl rumbling deep in his chest. Jack knelt, running a hand down the dog's back. You feel it too, huh? Maya scanned the tree line. They know I survived. It's just a matter of time before they figure out where I drifted. Jack straightened, following the faint curve of the road uphill. Then we find them first. They hiked toward the ridge above the river, the mud sucking at their boots. The air smelled of iron and cedar, and the wind carried faint echoes from across the valley. An engine, distant and fading. When they reached the crest, Jack lifted his binoculars. Below, nestled in the hollow between two ridges, stood a wooden outpost, old and gray, its roof half collapsed from years of weather. Except it wasn't abandoned anymore. Trucks, black, unmarked, were parked in a rough semicircle. Men moved between them, their shapes ghost-like in the haze. Maya took the binoculars. Her breath caught. "That's it," she said. "That's their drop site. The black raven symbol. See the wings on the crates?" Jack narrowed his eyes. Each crate was stamped with a raven silhouette, wings spread wide around a black circle. Black Raven Logistics. "Tell me about them," he said quietly. Maya exhaled, lowering the binoculars. "Black Raven's supposed to be a shipping company out of Seattle. Legitimate on paper, clean taxes, spotless records. But they're moving weapons. Thousands of rifles from Eastern Europe, routed through Vancouver, down the border trails into Montana. And they've got help on both sides." Jack's eyes hardened. "You mean your own people?" She nodded. "Sterling, my commanding officer. He oversaw our unit's intel division. Every move we made, every lead we had, it all went straight through him. When my team got ambushed, I found out too late. The last message I got before the radio died was from him. He told me to hold position. And then the shooting started." Jack said nothing. The river below hissed, swollen with the memory of the storm. He could see the pain behind her composure, the kind that didn't fade, only buried itself under duty. He knew that kind of pain. A low growl from Rex drew their attention back to the ridge. The dog's body stiffened, nose pointed east. Jack followed his gaze. Through the trees, a flicker of movement, a figure in dark clothing, half hidden among the pines, watching them. Jack raised his rifle, but by the time he aimed, the figure was gone, swallowed by the forest. "Down," he hissed, pulling Maya behind a fallen log. They crouched, listening. The woods were still, except for the river's murmur and Rex's steady breathing. "Scout?" she whispered. "Probably," Jack said. "Someone's making sure the cabin's clear before they move in." She glanced back toward the trail. "We should leave before they circle back." He shook his head. "No. If they're close enough to send scouts, they already know where we are. Running won't help." Maya pressed her lips together, frustration tightening her voice. "Then what do you suggest?" Jack looked back down at the outpost, the trucks, the guards. "We hit them first. Get eyes on what's really down there. Maybe find out what they're moving and who's in charge." She blinked. "You're suggesting we spy on a weapons cartel?" "Lady," Jack said with a faint smirk, "I've done dumber things before breakfast." They spent the next hours circling the ridge, keeping low under the canopy. The ground was slick, the air thick with mist. As they crept closer, the sound of voices drifted up. 2 men arguing near one of the trucks. Jack motioned for Maya to stay put while he moved closer. The guards were rough-looking, ex-military maybe. One was broad, bald, with a faded tattoo of a snake coiled around his neck. The other, leaner, had a thick beard and nervous eyes. Jack caught fragments of conversation. "Shipment delayed, storm messed the crossing, boss ain't happy." When the bald man turned, Jack caught the flash of a pistol on his hip. "Police issue, Montana State." His stomach tightened. They weren't just criminals, they were mixed with law enforcement. He slipped back to Maya's position. "You were right," he said. "They've got uniforms working with them." She clenched her fists. "Then it's bigger than I thought." From below, an engine rumbled. A black SUV pulled up beside the trucks, its doors gleaming with fresh paint. 2 men stepped out, one short, stocky, in a leather jacket, the other tall, slim, wearing a tan trench coat and dark gloves. The taller man moved with precision, the kind of stillness that came from confidence or cruelty. His face was narrow, with sharp cheekbones and close-cropped blonde hair. When he removed his gloves, his fingers were long, immaculate, the hands of someone who preferred others to do the dirty work. Maya stiffened. "That's Harris," she whispered. "Sterling's right hand. He's running the logistics while Sterling stays clean." Jack studied him through the binoculars. "Looks clean to me. The dangerous kind," Harris walked between the crates, giving quiet orders. When one of the men hesitated, he struck him across the face with the back of his hand. Calm, efficient, almost bored. There was no rage in it, just the absence of empathy. Jack had seen men like that before, the kind who never needed to raise their voice to kill. After several minutes, Harris entered the main cabin of the outpost with 2 guards. Jack lowered the binoculars. "We need to move. They'll sweep the perimeter soon." Maya nodded. "We have to get proof before they pack up." They retreated silently back toward the ridge, but as they neared the top, a branch snapped behind them. Jack spun, rifle raised, too late. A shot cracked through the trees, shattering bark inches from his head. They dropped to the ground as a second shot followed. "Go," Jack barked. Maya scrambled uphill, Rex at her side. Bullets tore through the ferns, chasing them as they ran. Jack turned once, fired a single round into the trees. A muffled cry answered. Then silence. They climbed until their lungs burned, not stopping until the outpost was a blur behind the mist. When they finally reached the cabin, Maya collapsed into a chair, breathing hard. Jack checked the window again, scanning the riverbank. "They know we're watching," he said. "And now they'll come for us," Maya whispered. Jack set the rifle down, his jaw tightening. "Let them. But next time we're ready." Outside, the clouds thickened again, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. Not weather this time, but the echo of engines moving closer. The forest had gone silent, as if the storm itself were holding its breath. The sky was black with low clouds that hung like smoke, and the only light came from the dying embers in the fireplace. Jack Callahan sat by the table, cleaning the rifle with slow, methodical precision. Every few minutes, he glanced toward the window where the rain traced silver lines down the glass. His instincts were uneasy. Too much quiet after too much noise. Maya sat on the floor near the fire, wrapping a fresh bandage around Rex's foreleg. The shepherd whined softly, tail flicking as she tied the last knot. "You'll live, tough guy," she murmured. Her tone carried affection, but also exhaustion. Her hair, still damp from the mist, clung to her temples, and her face had the drawn, pale look of someone who hadn't slept properly in days. Jack watched her silently for a moment before asking, "You sure he's fit to move if we have to?" "He's tougher than me," she replied without looking up. "A few scratches won't stop him." Jack nodded, but his gaze lingered. The woman had grit, the kind that war either broke or forged. She reminded him of soldiers he'd served with, the ones who never flinched, even when everything else burned. Outside, a branch cracked. Jack froze. His hand went instinctively to the rifle. Maya looked up. "What is it?" "Shh." He held a finger to his lips, then he moved to the lamp and twisted the knob until the flame died. Darkness swallowed the room. The only sound was the storm whispering through the trees. Rex's ears pricked. He let out a low, guttural growl that vibrated through the floorboards. A second later, the glass shattered. The first shot ripped through the window, splintering wood and sending sparks from the fire scattering across the floor. Jack dove behind the overturned table, pulling Maya down with him. "Down!" he barked. Automatic fire erupted from the tree line, short, controlled bursts. Whoever was out there knew what they were doing. Jack counted at least 4 distinct muzzle flashes through the rain. 4 men, maybe 5, he muttered. "Black Raven?" Maya whispered. "Who else?" He crawled to the edge of the broken window, aimed, and fired twice. One shadow dropped, the others scattered behind the trees. Bullets slammed into the cabin walls, showering them with splinters. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. Gunfire mixing with thunder, chaos echoing in waves. Maya reloaded the spare magazine, sliding it across the floor to him. "They're flanking!" she shouted over the storm. Jack peeked out, saw movement near the back door. He grabbed the shotgun from the rack above the door, racked a shell, and fired. The blast tore through the night. A scream followed, then silence. For a few seconds, only the rain spoke again. Jack breathed hard, sweat and rain running down his face. He knew this wasn't over. Men like these didn't retreat. They regrouped. "Basement," he said. "Now." Maya hesitated. "What about the firewood room? It's reinforced." He shook his head. "They'll torch us out. We go through the crawl space." They crawled beneath the floorboards, where the space was narrow and damp. Rex followed, belly low, his eyes reflecting what little light filtered from above. Through the gaps, they saw shadows moving inside the cabin, boots crunching on broken glass, voices low and cold. One voice stood out, gravelly, impatient, American, but with a trace of European sharpness. "Find the woman," it said. "The seal's mine." Jack's jaw tightened. He knew that tone. That calm arrogance belonged to someone used to killing without consequence. Through a crack in the floor, he caught a glimpse of the man. Tall, square-shouldered, dressed in black tactical gear. He wore no insignia, but the way he carried himself screamed authority. His name was Rico Vance, a mercenary once known in Afghanistan as the Ghost Handler for leading covert assassinations that left no survivors. Mid-40s, dark hair peppered with gray, eyes the color of burnt steel. A faint scar ran from the corner of his mouth to his jaw, a reminder of a knife fight in Helmand. Rumor said he'd been discharged after killing a superior officer during a Black Ops mission gone wrong. Jack hadn't expected to see him again. "Of course it's you," he whispered under his breath. Maya looked at him questioningly. Jack leaned close. "That's Rico, ex-military, worked for private contractors. No conscience, no leash." Her brow furrowed. "You know him?" "Used to," he replied darkly. Above them, Rico's voice cut through the silence. "Light it up," he said simply. The order was clear. Flames caught quickly. First the curtains, then the wooden beams. Smoke began to seep through the cracks, thick and acrid. Maya covered her mouth, eyes watering. "Jack!" He was already moving, pushing open the crawl space hatch that led to the back slope of the cabin. "Move!" They burst out into the rain, coughing. Behind them, the cabin was already an inferno, the fire feeding hungrily on dry timber. The heat scorched their backs as they stumbled into the trees. Bullets followed, wild now, blind in the smoke. Jack ducked behind a rock, firing back. Maya covered the flank, squeezing off controlled bursts with the pistol. Rex lunged at a shadow that came too close, dragging the attacker into the mud. The man screamed once, then was silent. Jack grabbed Maya's arm. "We need distance." They ran downhill, the river's roar growing louder. Behind them, the cabin collapsed with a groan, sparks leaping high into the rain-dark sky. For a moment, the whole ridge glowed with the light of burning pine. They reached a narrow clearing, breath ragged, clothes soaked. Jack dropped to one knee, scanning the slope above through the rifle's scope. Figures moved along the ridge. 2 of them, maybe 3, silhouetted by the fire. One was Rico, standing motionless at the edge of the flames, watching them escape. His face was expressionless, almost calm, as if he were watching a movie he'd already seen. Then he lifted something from his belt and tossed it into the burning ruins. A metallic flash. Jack's heart sank. "Down," he yelled, pulling Maya behind a fallen log. The explosion tore through the hillside a second later, sending a shockwave that rippled the air. Fire and debris rained across the clearing. When the noise finally died, all that was left of Jack's cabin was a crater of glowing ash. Jack sat still, chest heaving, eyes locked on the destruction. "That was my home," he said quietly. His tone wasn't grief. It was resolve. "No more running." Maya turned toward him, her face lit by the fire's dying light. "Rico won't stop. Not until he's sure we're dead." "Then we make sure he dies first," Jack said. As they stood, something caught Maya's eye amid the debris rolling down the slope. A small black object, half melted, reflecting the flames. She picked it up. It was a satellite tracker, the screen cracked but still faintly glowing. On it, one coordinate blinked steadily. 47.921. Raven Point. Her breath hitched. "Jack," she said, voice trembling slightly. "This is where they're moving the shipments. It's their main hub." Jack looked up at the burning forest, rain hissing on smoldering wood. "Then that's where we finish this." He slung his rifle over his shoulder, helping her to her feet. The forest around them crackled with fire and rain, the night alive with smoke and vengeance. Behind them, Rex let out a low bark, ears pricked toward the distance. The dog's eyes glowed like amber in the dark, alive, ready. Jack gave one last glance at the ruin of his cabin, then turned toward the northern ridge where the stars were barely visible through the haze. "Let's go hunting," he said. The river was calmer now, but it moved with the quiet strength of something ancient and unknowable. Morning fog coiled over the surface like breath on glass, swallowing the light and muffling every sound except the steady rhythm of water against wood. The makeshift raft drifted downstream, guided by a long pole in Jack Callahan's hands. His movements were efficient and silent, the kind of discipline that came from years of military training. Every so often he glanced toward the banks, eyes scanning the tree line for movement. Beside him sat Maya, her hair tied back under a hood, face marked with streaks of soot from the night before. Exhaustion clung to her, but her eyes, dark and focused, still carried the sharpness of purpose. Her hands rested on Rex's shoulders, fingers absently stroking the dog's fur. The shepherd had recovered more quickly than either of them expected, his gaze alert, tail still and ready. He was young, maybe 4 years old, muscles lean but powerful beneath his sable and black coat, his loyalty to Maya absolute. The air smelled of wet pine and smoke. Behind them, a thin column of gray still rose from what remained of Jack's cabin. He hadn't spoken much since the explosion, and Maya understood why. The cabin had been more than a home. It was the last piece of a life he'd tried to leave behind. For a long time, they floated in silence. Then Maya broke it. "I used to think Sterling was the best cop I'd ever known," she said, her voice quiet, as if speaking too loudly might wake the ghosts around them. "He was the one who trained me. He taught me how to interrogate, how to shoot, how to trust my instincts. He even vouched for me when no one else would." Jack said nothing. The pole scraped the riverbed as he steered them toward the deeper current. Maya continued, her gaze distant. "When I got the undercover assignment, I thought he was protecting me, but it was him. The ambush, the hit order, the shipment routes, all of it came from him. I didn't see it until it was too late." Jack's voice was low, rough as gravel. "You wanted to believe in something clean. That's not weakness." "It feels like it," she said. "When you've built your life on justice, and then find out the devil wears your badge?" Jack looked at her, and for a moment the soldier's mask cracked. "The devil wears a lot of uniforms. Some of us just stopped pretending it makes us saints." The river bent sharply to the west, widening into a basin surrounded by steep cliffs of shale and moss. Above the ridgeline, A thin metal tower jutted out, a radio relay or perhaps a lookout post. Jack slowed the raft, signaling Maya to keep quiet. The dog, as if understanding, sank lower, his ears twitching. They pulled the raft behind a fallen tree near the bank. Jack lifted his binoculars and scanned the valley ahead. What he saw made his stomach harden. Nestled in the bend of the river stood an abandoned mining complex, its skeletal cranes and rusted conveyor belts silhouetted against the mist. But the mine wasn't abandoned anymore. Trucks, military grade, painted in muted forest green, lined the yard. Men in tactical gear moved between them, loading wooden crates marked with black stencils, Raven Point Supply. At the far end of the yard, floodlights illuminated a large metal warehouse, its doors open to reveal rows of rifles stacked like bones. Maya crouched beside him, peering through the lenses. "That's it," she whispered. "The main hub. The weapons come here from Canada before being redistributed inland." Jack adjusted the focus, noting details automatically. The number of guards, the shift rotations, the communication towers. "How many men do you think?" "At least 30, maybe more inside. And those trucks, they're the same kind used by military contractors. Someone's funding this with deep pockets." He pulled a small camera from his jacket, a compact tactical model used for reconnaissance. "We get proof, we get out. You said you had a contact you can trust?" She nodded. "Agent Corbin Vance, DEA, my older brother. He's been investigating Sterling's finances for months, off the record." Jack raised a brow. "Your brother?" "Yeah, we don't talk much. He says I remind him of our dad. Too stubborn to live long." Jack allowed himself a faint smile. "He's probably right." They waited until the patrol near the river shifted away, then silently moved along the bank, keeping to the shadows of the trees. Rex padded ahead, nose low, guiding them through the damp undergrowth. Every few steps he glanced back, as if to make sure they were following. The closer they got, the stronger the smell of oil, gasoline, and gunpowder became. A faint hum filled the air, the sound of generators and machinery beneath the earth. It wasn't just a warehouse, it was a production site. They reached a ridge overlooking the yard. From there, they could see the full scope of Raven Point: half a dozen trucks, 2 guard towers, and at least 1 underground access tunnel leading deeper into the mine. Jack crouched, lifting the camera. The lens clicked softly as he captured each angle. The logo on the crates, the truck's serial numbers, the guards' faces. When he was done, he handed the camera to Maya. "That should be enough to burn them," he said. But as they turned to leave, Rex froze. His hackles rose, ears sharp. Jack followed his gaze. Below, near the southern gate, a guard had stopped, flashlight sweeping across the ground. The man's face was hidden by a balaclava, but his movements were careful, searching. He was tracking something. Maya whispered, "Do you think he saw us?" Jack shook his head slowly. "No, but he smells the dog." A moment later, a sharp beam of light cut through the fog and locked directly on their ridge. "Hey, over there!" "Move," Jack hissed. They sprinted toward the river, gunfire cracking through the morning mist. Bullets tore through branches, splintering bark. Maya stumbled, caught herself, and kept running. Rex darted beside her, barking fiercely, trying to draw attention away. Jack turned once, fired a quick burst that dropped one of the pursuers. "Keep going!" They burst through the tree line and reached the water's edge. The raft was still tethered under the fallen tree. Jack shoved it out into the current, helping Maya climb aboard before leaping after her. Bullets struck the water around them, throwing up white plumes. From the bank, one of the soldiers shouted into his radio, voice clear even over the gunfire. "Contact confirmed. The woman's alive. Repeat. Maya Lopez is alive. Alert Lieutenant Sterling. Maya's blood ran cold. She met Jack's eyes, the truth finally settling between them like a knife. He's not just part of it, she said, voice shaking. He's running it. Jack didn't reply. He pushed the pole deep into the current, steering them downstream as the gunfire faded behind them. The fog closed in again, hiding them from view. Only the river spoke now, carrying them through the darkness toward a reckoning that none of them could avoid. The storm came without warning, a wall of gray that swallowed the mountains whole. Thunder rolled through the forest like the voice of something ancient and angry, shaking the earth beneath the roots. Jack Callahan could barely hear his own breath over the pounding rain as he and Maya pushed through the dense undergrowth, the dog close behind. The world had shrunk to sound and shadow, gunfire echoing faintly behind them, the wind snapping branches, the smell of gunpowder mixed with pine. "Keep moving!" Jack shouted over the roar. Water streamed down his face, soaking his shirt and the rifle strapped to his chest. He moved with mechanical precision, every motion efficient, driven by survival. Maya stumbled once but caught herself, clutching the small waterproof case strapped to her vest, the camera that held proof of everything. Rex ran ahead, his fur matted with rain and mud, his body low to the ground. The shepherd's stamina was failing, but his spirit was unbroken. Every time Maya faltered, he circled back, nudging her leg with his nose before moving on. Behind them, the sharp, clipped voice of Harris echoed through the storm. "Fan out! They're on foot!" Jack froze for half a second, listening. The man's tone hadn't changed. Calm, surgical, almost bored. It was the voice of someone who never needed to shout to kill. He knew that voice would haunt him long after this storm was over. Lightning flashed, revealing the landscape, a steep slope ahead leading to the abandoned mining road that wound toward Raven Point. Smoke still rose from the earlier skirmish, mingling with the fog. Jack turned to Maya. "We can't outrun them in this. We'll have to make a stand." She nodded, panting, eyes burning with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Then let's end it." They slid down the muddy slope, landing hard near the rusted gate of the mine complex. The yard was half flooded, water rushing through the broken drainage channels. Black crates floated like ghosts in the torrent, bumping against overturned trucks. Jack moved quickly, scanning the area. "We use the terrain. Funnel them toward us." Maya crouched beside a broken truck, checking her pistol. Her hands shook slightly, not from fear but adrenaline. "How many do you think?" "Too many," he said. The first shots came moments later. Harris's men advancing in formation, dark shapes emerging from the rain like wraiths. Jack fired a controlled burst, dropped one. Another tried to flank, but Rex leapt from the shadows, tackling the man into the mud. The shepherd's teeth sank deep into the attacker's arm, a flash of red in the storm's blue light. "Good boy!" Maya shouted, covering Jack's flank. But the numbers were against them. The men moved with precision, their tactics trained, not mercenaries but soldiers. Harris was running this like a military operation. Then, from the chaos, the man himself appeared. Harris, stepping out from the smoke and rain with that same unhurried stride. His trench coat was soaked, plastered to his tall, lean frame. His blonde hair clung to his forehead, and his pale eyes gleamed like ice under lightning. There was no anger in his expression, only contempt. He held Maya at gunpoint, having come around from the rear. "Drop it," he called out to Jack, voice steady even in the wind, "or she dies." Maya's chest heaved, but she didn't flinch. Her hands clenched into fists, eyes fixed on Jack. "Don't," she whispered. Jack froze, rain dripping from his jaw, his expression unreadable. "You want the drive?" he said finally, holding up the small waterproof case. "Take it. Just let her go." Harris gave a small, almost polite nod. "Smart man?" He motioned one of his men forward. "Retrieve it." As the soldier approached, Jack slowly lowered the case to the ground. But as he did, his other hand moved behind the broken truck, fingers brushing against a thin copper wire connected to a small bundle hidden beneath the mud. Homemade explosives, rigged from leftover mining charges and fishing powder he'd scavenged the night before. When the soldier reached for the case, Jack whispered under his breath, "Now." He hit the detonator. The explosion ripped through the storm like a cannon. Fire and debris erupted into the air, the blast wave knocking everyone off their feet. The ground buckled as part of the mine's entrance collapsed in a deafening roar. Maya hit the ground hard, the wind knocked from her lungs. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard shouting, men screaming, the crack of gunfire, and somewhere in it all, Rex's growl. Harris staggered to his feet, disoriented but still alive. His coat was torn, a gash bleeding along his temple. "You think this stops me?" he snarled, raising his pistol. Jack was faster. He fired once, the bullet grazing Harris's shoulder. The man ducked behind a half-collapsed generator, returning fire. Sparks flew as rounds ricocheted off metal. Maya crawled toward Rex, who was limping but still standing. The shepherd's right side was bleeding, a deep graze, yet he barked fiercely, refusing to back down. Harris emerged again, his movements sharp despite the pain. He fired twice, forcing Jack into cover, then grabbed Maya, wrenching her arm behind her back. "Enough of this," he hissed. "Give me the drive or she dies right here." Jack's face went still, not fear, not hesitation, just that dangerous quiet that came before violence. "You're making the same mistake they all make," he said. "You think I came here to survive?" Harris frowned. "What?" Before he could finish, Rex lunged, a blur of muscle and fury. His jaws locked around Harris's forearm, dragging him backward. The gun went off, the shot wild. Maya twisted free, and Jack surged forward, slamming into Harris with the force of years of training and rage. The two men crashed into the mud, struggling for control. Harris swung, landing a glancing blow across Jack's jaw. "You should have stayed hidden," he spat. "You don't know what you're up against." Jack drove his elbow into Harris's ribs, forcing the pistol loose. "I know exactly what I'm up against," he growled. "A coward hiding behind uniforms and lies." He raised the gun and fired. The shot struck Harris square in the chest. The man's body jerked once, then fell still, eyes staring blankly into the rain. Jack stood over him for a long moment, chest heaving. Then he turned to Maya and Rex. "We're done here," he said hoarsely. But the storm had other ideas. The explosion had triggered something deeper, a chain reaction from the mine's buried stockpile. A deep rumble rolled beneath their feet, followed by a blinding flash. "Run!" Jack shouted. They sprinted towards the tree line as the entire slope erupted behind them. Flames burst through the rain, lighting up the sky with a fiery glow. The roar of collapsing tunnels drowned out the storm. Heat washed over them as debris rained down. They dove behind a ridge just as the main shaft imploded, sending a plume of fire and smoke 100 feet into the air. For a moment, it looked like the mountain itself was bleeding light. When the noise finally died, only rain remained. Maya lay on her back, chest heaving, face streaked with mud and tears. "Is it over?" she asked. Jack looked toward the burning crater where Raven Point had been. "Yeah," he said quietly. "It's over." In the distance, the faint whine of rotor blades grew louder. Red and blue lights flickered through the mist. A rescue helicopter, the ATF insignia glowing on its side, hovered above the tree line. Maya smiled faintly, exhaustion overtaking her. "Justice came late," she whispered, "but it came." Jack reached over, resting a hand on Rex's head. The dog pressed closer, his body trembling but alive. "You did good, soldier," he murmured. As the helicopter's spotlight cut through the rain, the three of them stood together, a soldier, a cop, and a dog, silhouetted against the burning wreckage of Raven Point. The storm raged around them, but for the first time, it sounded almost peaceful. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world washed clean. The forest, once a battlefield of fire and thunder, now lay quiet beneath the first light of dawn. Smoke still curled from the ruins of Raven Point, but the rain had carried away the blood and soot, leaving only the scent of wet earth and pine. The river murmured softly, as if it too was exhaling after holding its breath through the chaos. Jack Callahan stood on the ridge above the valley, watching as a convoy of black SUVs wound its way down the muddy road below. The insignia of the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, gleamed faintly on their doors. The agents moved with practiced precision, securing the scene that had once been a fortress. The nightmare was over. He heard footsteps behind him, light, quick, professional. A woman's voice spoke through the morning chill. "They got him." Jack turned. Special Agent Nora Caldwell stood there, clipboard in hand, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun. She was in her late 30s, tall and lean, her expression composed but her eyes kind. Years in federal service had etched quiet authority into her posture. "Sterling's in custody," she continued. "The USB you recovered had full transaction logs, names, shipments, account trails. Between that and your footage, the entire Black Raven network's going down. You did the country a favor." Jack's face remained unreadable. "I didn't do it for the country." Nora studied him for a moment, then nodded. "Then do it for the peace you bought. Maya Lopez will be fine. She's with our medics." Jack gave a faint, tired smile. "She's tougher than she looks." Nora returned the smile, a fleeting, human moment, before the professionalism slipped back into place. "You're free to go, Mr. Callahan. Though if you ever want a badge again, I could use a man like you." He shook his head. "I've had my share of orders." She extended her hand. "Then take care of yourself, SEAL." Jack hesitated, then took it. Her grip was firm, and when she turned to leave, he watched her stride down the ridge with the calm efficiency of someone who had seen the cost of justice too many times before. The helicopter that had brought them buzzed overhead, carrying Sterling away in chains. Through the cabin window, Jack caught a glimpse of the man, once polished, commanding, untouchable. Now his face was pale, eyes hollow, the weight of betrayal heavy on his shoulders. Sterling had built an empire of shadows, and now the light had found him. By afternoon, the forest was silent again. The agents left, the trucks rolled out, and the valley began to heal. Jack stayed a while longer, then started walking, not toward the city, but away from it, following the river north where the world was still wild and unclaimed. Days turned to weeks. The rains came and went. Jack rebuilt the cabin on the same foundation where it had burned, using the old stones and new timber from the forest. The scars of fire still marked the ground, but life was returning. Green shoots pushing through black soil, the smell of cedar mixing with fresh rain. At dawn one morning, he stood by the riverbank, hammer in hand, watching the mist rise off the water. The silence was no longer heavy. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, he felt something close to home. Rex appeared first, bounding through the brush, tail wagging, fur gleaming gold in the soft light. The shepherd barked once, joyfully, before running straight to him. Jack crouched, smiling as the dog pressed its head against his chest. "You again, huh?" he murmured. Then he saw her. Maya walked out from the trees, her figure framed by sunlight filtering through the leaves. She was in civilian clothes now, jeans, a khaki jacket, her badge nowhere in sight. Her hair was loose, wind-blown, and her eyes carried a warmth Jack hadn't seen before. She looked stronger, freer, as though the darkness had finally lifted from her shoulders. "You rebuilt it," she said softly, looking at the cabin behind him. "Couldn't let the river have all the memories," Jack replied. She smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. "They gave me the Medal of Valor. Said I was the first officer in the district to survive a cross-border arms ring. Congratulations." "They gave Rex one too," she added, scratching the dog's neck. "K9 Valor Award. He got more applause than I did." Jack chuckled. "Deserved it." She glanced at him. "And you? They wanted to give you a medal too. You didn't even show up." "I'm not much for ceremonies," he said. "Besides, I already got what I came for." "What's that?" He looked toward the river, its surface glittering with early sunlight. "A second chance to build something that lasts." They stood in silence for a while, watching the water move. The morning light stretched across the valley, golden and gentle, turning the remnants of ash into silver dust. After a time, Maya sat down on the edge of the porch, Rex curling up beside her. Jack joined them, the wood creaking under his weight. For a long moment, no one spoke. The river murmured, birds called from the trees, and the smell of coffee drifted faintly from the pot he'd set on the stove earlier. Maya broke the silence. "You think people like us ever really find peace?" Jack leaned back, his gaze lost in the current. "Some go looking for it," he said finally. "Others build it with their own hands." She looked at him, eyes soft. "And which one are you?" He smiled faintly. "The second kind, I guess." The wind off the water carried the scent of rain and cedar. The sun rose higher, painting the river in hues of gold and blue. For the first time in a long time, the world felt alive, not perfect, but whole. Rex lifted his head, ears twitching toward the distance, then relaxed again, laying, his muzzle on Maya's knee. She rested a hand on his fur, eyes half closed, breathing in the peace around them. Jack reached for the mug beside him, steam curling into the air. He took a sip, then said, almost to himself, "We went through hell to make this morning happen." Maya looked up at him. "And we survived." He nodded, setting the cup down. "There'll always be another storm somewhere. But for now, this one's ours." The river sparkled under the new sun, and the wind whispered through the trees. Jack glanced at Maya, then at the dog, and a small, rare smile touched his face. "Come on," he said, rising from the porch. "Let's start the day." The three of them walked down to the riverbank together, their shadows stretching long across the grass. The water gleamed with the colors of the sky, blue, gold, and silver. And for a moment it was hard to tell where the river ended and the dawn began. In the end, this story is not just about survival or justice. It's about grace. Because sometimes the miracles we wait for don't come as flashes of light or heavenly voices, but through ordinary hands, through people who still choose to stand up when the world falls silent. Like Jack, Maya, and Rex, we all walk through storms, some made of fire, some made of fear, but every dawn that follows is proof that God never leaves us without a way forward. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a reminder that faith still moves mountains. Leave a comment, subscribe, and may the Lord bless and protect everyone who watches, guiding your path through every storm toward the light of a new morning.